Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, bringing you episode 146 here at the tavern, presented by HeroTaku.com. Now, I first want to go ahead and start by offering all my fans out there an apology. Specifically, I want to go ahead and apologize for the fact that I have not been keeping up with the Ninninger vlogs. Here's the thing. After doing the ToQger vlogs, I really got burned out with the process. For those of you who don't really follow the vlogs or understand what goes into them, I watch every episode as it comes out, particularly with the subs. I watch it two or three times. I write down specific notes and things I want to talk about, and it's a very involved process. But after doing that with ToQger, a series I really dislike and did not enjoy, I got burned out on it in that sense. Again, I just didn't enjoy it and it was so much work. Plus, with my daughter being here now, it is something I just really can't fit into my schedule on a consistent, thorough basis. So I decided several weeks ago to really just stop doing the vlogs for Ninja, just get through it, get caught up so I can get caught up with Zoojer, and I can focus a little bit more on Dino Charge and Dino Supercharge. But I apologize. I did not complete them, and frankly, because of the format and the way I chose to do it, I'm not going to go ahead and complete those. So I'm sorry for you guys out there who really did enjoy that, and I don't know if I will be going to the vlog series again. Certainly, I'm not going to be doing it for Zoojer, again, for all the reasons that I stated. But what I'd like to go ahead and do to at least make up for it is what I always plan to do, which is this overall recap of the Ninja series. So I hope you guys can at least enjoy it here. And again, I apologize for those of you who really enjoyed it, that we're not going to be able to go ahead and finish that. And that's also true of the Dino Charge vlogs, the Super Mega Force. Anytime I try to do a vlog, it just never worked out, and I really had to work to get that ToQger stuff done. So again, I want to go ahead and apologize there. Now, that being said, today we're going to go ahead and talk about Shuriken Sentai Ninja and its entirety. Now, just to let you guys know, I have seen every episode. I just finished the last episode. I did go ahead and see the summer film with the Dinosaur Lord. That's not really going to factor into too much of what I'm going to be talking about, but I've yet to see the ToQger versus Ninja movie because apparently in my town it won't be released for another week or so in the theaters here, so go figure. And of course, I'm not going to wait the 6 months for the epilogue DVD to come out to really talk about that, but there are elements to it that I do want to go ahead and talk about that we know at this particular point. Nevertheless, I want to do my best to be thorough in this. I've written down several notes here on things I want to go ahead and cover in the series, and a lot of this is going to be free form, just kind of off the top of my head. But again, the main talking points I have written down here, and I want to go over with you guys. First of all, let me start with this. From what I have read from a lot of other people at this point, is a lot of people did not enjoy Ninja at all. It was heavily criticized, and the thing is that a lot of the criticism that I read at the beginning of the series and at the end of the series is completely different. The criticism as the series started was that it focused too much on Takaharu. There was too much Red Ranger centric, which is certainly true of a lot of Sentai, and I definitely criticized that in the vlogs when that did happen. But the unusual thing is, by the end of the series, the criticism I'm hearing from a lot of people is that it was bland, it was boring, it just wasn't interesting. It just kind of like, it's there, it's not offensive, it's not really bad, it's just meh, whatever. Which I wouldn't say is a big criticism against it because, frankly, you can either be bland, inoffensive, and boring and be like GoSager, which isn't all that bad, or you can be stupid, repetitive, and nonsensical and be like ToQger or Power Rangers RPM. And coming off of ToQger, this it's certainly better than ToQger. I would go ahead and say that. ToQger to me was just bad on many levels, from the premise down to the execution, to the characters, lack of character development, the villains. There was just a lot of bad things about it. And the thing is, with with Ninninger, I don't find as many bad things because they tried a lot of good things, but it just didn't work out. And I think there's a significant difference there. And something I do want to go ahead and point out is the overall plot, because I really slammed ToQger in its plot. And I'm not going to slam Ninninger in its plot because they are two different ways of going about it. Because here's the thing. The reason I have a problem with ToQger was that it called for our protagonists to be proactive in what they were doing. Because what was the whole point of that show? Was that the five ToQger don't have their memories and they have to find their hometown of Subaru Gohama. That was the whole point. But what did we particularly see in that series? It was stop at a new station, react to danger as it's coming to you, and get sidetracked baking cakes and going to bathhouses as opposed to, gaining back our memories and finding our family. That's the kind of stuff I found offensive and just really dragged the show down. Ninja is more traditionally set up where they're in a singular location, everybody knows who they are. It's a simple kind of story, and they are reacting to villains who are trying to go ahead and take over the world. So they're not proactive, they are reactive, which is a criticism of a lot of superhero genres out there. I get that, and it is a criticism of Power Rangers and Super Sentai, but it is more of a traditional setup, and I don't fault it for that. If you guys get what I'm trying to go ahead and say, is that it has a traditional Sentai format that they got something they got to go ahead and do. The villain interferes with that, and they have to go stop them, which is perfectly fine. But they do have an end goal. What is it? Again, ToQger's trying to find their family and get their memories. That was their end goal, and they spent 30 episodes not even bothering with that at all. In Ninja, the goal is to train to become the last ninja, to gain the prize at the end of the series. And frankly, every episode did a great job of that, where they were training, they were working hard to actually be the last ninja, and that pays off towards the end of the series and in the final episode. Not to mention that is tied into the plot with one of our main villains. So for overall setup, it is significantly better than ToQger. It is back to basics on what we get with Sentai and Power Rangers by extension. Um, but I don't think that should be held against it, and a lot of people do look at it as being, boring for whatever reason. But again, coming after ToQger, I mean, if this came after GoKaiger or the first half of GoBuster, then yeah, I would see there's a significant problem. But again, it's a step up from ToQger, so I'm not really going to be complaining too much regarding that, because again, it's better than what we had before. But again, I don't think. I mean, again, that first half of Go Buster, that was really good. We were apexing, and then we just kind of went down, a little bit up with Killger, down with ToQger, and we've gone up with Ninja, and I only hope we can go up with Zoologer as we continue on. All right, so again, let's go ahead and talk about specific characters first. Let's start with the Rangers themselves, the Ninja, whatever. So first we got Takaharu Aka Ranger. Not Aka Ranger, Aka Ninja. I'm going to get that mixed up. I'll just call him the Red Ranger just so that I don't get mixed up with that. So, okay, so the big problem with Takaharu at the beginning of the series, as I said, is all the plots were focused on him. Up until the Gold Ranger showed up, it was all about Takaharu. The villain was against him. It was about his journey, and it was about his sacrifice, going back in time, and him learning all these lessons, yada, yada, yada. Really, in the first 10 episodes, it was very exasperating that we had all these other characters, these more interesting characters that I thought, and we did focus on the Red Ranger far too much. And again, a lot of Sentai does that. But I will credit Ninja this, is that as the series went on, because here's the thing, is it really focused on Takaharu, then it really focused on our Gold Ranger, Kinji, and then after that, after the Gold Ranger stuff was pretty much in the background, they did start to focus on other characters, a little bit more of the plot, and Takaharu, I'm not going to say he was left in the background. I mean, he was still important, but they weren't focusing every episode on him. They weren't working every other episode to say, this is what he means to the team, this is how important he is, and things like that. Sure, is there examples of that later in the series, like with the Lion Hoa and the armor and all that kind of stuff? Absolutely, there is, that without question. But the best thing about it is they toned it down. That's what they did. After the Gold Ranger arc, they toned it down. They focused a little bit more on the other characters, and I liked that. It was a little bit more even as we got on, because as I had said in my previous video, usually you get two or three Rangers that they focus on intensely throughout the series, and the others get thrown to the background. And the thing is, I think in this series, we got at least four Rangers that we kind of focused on, where they did leave lasting impressions on who they are as characters, and maybe one or two that really didn't kind of work out. And again, we'll talk about that. But ToQger, I really don't have much to say about him in general, simply because, again, they focused on him too much. They got bare with it. He's the standard Sentai leader, the ambitious one. He's not like Ryu. He's not like Geki or anything like that. He's his own character. He is more of the modern Red Rangers, where he is ambitious. He is, I wouldn't say he's the outsider, the rookie Red Ranger thing like we had over in Power Rangers, but really just kind of the idea that he is the excitable one, that he isn't the wise and stoic leader. He has wisdom. I will point that out, that he gets later in the series. But he is that headstrong character that we've come to expect. So there's really nothing particularly offensive about him, but he is sort of just kind of there, really. You really thought that his rivalry with Yakumo at the beginning of the series to become the last ninja would pay off a little bit more as it went on, but nah, it really didn't. And let's actually go ahead and talk about Yakumo, or Cloud, or whatever you want to go ahead and call him. Calling him Cloud was a lot easier, but now that I've actually gotten better with my Japanese, I can go ahead and say Yakumo without being too bad. His character, to be honest, I really didn't like him, and I still don't like him, but I don't actively dislike him as I did at the beginning of the series. That was the thing. When the series started, I think he was my least favorite character. They've had this thing with Blue Rangers in the last couple of years where I just don't like them as characters. I'm just not enjoying them at all. And this guy, he did not have the best first impression for me. He was arrogant. He was standoffish. And he tries to be different, I think, for the sake of being different sometimes. And again, that was kind of the beginning of the series. But as it went on, he kind of grew on me. He was okay. He wasn't so bad and everything. But I still just don't like him. I didn't find him that interesting. The whole idea that he's from a ninja family, but he wants to learn magic, I think is interesting, because what we'll get into about the theme of this particular series is the idea of setting your own path against fate, against destiny, and he chose to not abandon the ninja lifestyle, but to supplement it with something new. And again, that's something that I think covers with the overall theme of the series. And the idea that he is a ninja and he has this magic and he do these interesting things was pretty cool. I liked that. It just didn't go anywhere with me, and it was more bizarre with him as we continued on with him, because there was this kind of running gag in several episodes where he would talk about the pride of being English or being from England or something like that. And then, of course, Anagi had to point out, Yakuma, he's not English. And it's just kind of this weird thing where he identifies himself with being English, but of course he's Japanese. And I guess the best way to look at it is he's like a person who goes to Japan, comes back, and identifies as being Japanese when he's not Japanese. And you guys know who I'm talking about, the weeaboos or whatever it is. I have no idea what they call people like that, or maybe I'm one, who knows. So it's kind of a reverse thing like that. The only thing that really, really did bother me was that whole episode with the damn lawnmower. That not only does he name his lawnmower, but he treats it like it's a living thing. Now, I know, I know to take care of my toys, the collector's items that I got, my SH figure arts, my Zords, and stuff like that, and make sure they don't get damaged or anything like that. But man, he took it to a whole new level with that lawnmower, even before it became a monster. And he talks about the pride of the lawns and stuff like that. I mean, he basically turned into a Japanese Hank Hill there for a second, which, come to think about it, Hank has a half brother that is Japanese, so, well, there you go. Just way too obsessive into that lawnmower. It was really bothersome, but Again, I disliked him at the beginning of the series, and I don't know. At the end of the day, he's not as offensive, but I really did wish they would do more with him because, again, and as I said in the vlogs, when they first start learning ninja history and techniques and all that kind of stuff, they have the four rangers sitting traditional Japanese style on the floor, pads and tables and all that kind of stuff, and he is sitting in a regular half desk, basically a chair with a desk, whatever you call that thing, and he's in the back of the class. And what I said at the time was they are visually separating him from the others because he is English, they are all true Japanese. He thinks he's something else. He studies something else that's different from them, so he doesn't really belong. And how's that going to tie in? It never really ties in. He doesn't become the odd man out, basically, which is something you typically give to the Sixth Ranger, but even in that case, with our Sixth Ranger, was even like he wasn't even part of the group. But again, we'll get to him. Um, so yeah, character I just don't really care for, and I'm just like, whatever on it. Again, I disliked him, but now I don't actively dislike him. Nagi. Okay, Nagi at the beginning of the series, our Yellow Ranger, was probably my favorite character, or at least the one I looked at with the most potential to be most interesting amongst our male characters. He was my favorite amongst the male Rangers. Um, but the thing is, they never really did anything with him, and I feel really bad because I'm sitting here. I remember the episode where he talks about all the licenses he's got, and how he wants to be certified and stuff, which was like one of the first few episodes they did. I think the third, or fourth episode. Then I remember that stupid RPG episode, which is probably a low point for a lot of people, myself included. And beyond that, I really can't think of much else that he was in. I wish they would have done more with his character. I really like him. We finally have a male Yellow Ranger the first time in like a decade or some long stretch like that. And I'm not saying they should do it because he's a male Yellow Ranger, but he's different than what we've come to expect in the series, and I just thought he would be the more interesting person because he had the most room to grow as a character. But it just didn't happen, and I can't say much about him because again, they didn't do really anything with him. All they really did is give him a relationship with Fuka, but they didn't do much with her character either. And let's kind of segue into her. First of all, Fuka is just stunning. She is gorgeous. She is beautiful. And she's probably underage, so I should probably stop right there. Anywho, uh, okay, so again, I thought she was going to be kind of the breakout female character. Again, there's only two that we have, and this season really did lack in a lot of female characters. But Fuka, I really loved her. I thought she was going to be great. I loved her mannerisms. She was basically, as I described, the Amy Wong of the series, the physical comedy, the one that was always getting hurt or she was getting burned or something bad was happening to her. I mean, we're meant to laugh at her, basically, like, aha, the misfortune and all that. All the physical comedy is happening to her. Something you would probably think would happen to a Nagi character, Takaharu, given their status within the team. But no, it was the female, White Ranger that they did this to. But we really didn't learn much about her. She was like self-conscious and not very confident in herself. And I think about the seventh episode, she became confident, and that stayed relatively consistent through the series. But there really wasn't much to go on with her from that point. They didn't want to develop her. They didn't do anything interesting. They did the thing where they make her an idol and everything. I'm like, uh, I don't know. It's just with Nagi and Fuka, I think there was so much potential with stories there, but they just didn't expand upon them. They didn't make them interesting characters beyond what was already established. And I'm not saying that they're superficial or anything. It's just that they set them up like this and they stayed like that throughout the remainder of the series. And the same is true. Very few characters actually went through an arc, and I do want to talk about one that went through an arc here in a second. But Fuka, just like I just I liked her so much. I wish they would do something more with her. And that's the thing is like here is the funny thing about Sentai Power Rangers. Just go off a slight tangent. My favorite characters never get the proper screen time or development. It's just like again, what I said with Jungle Fury, I like the three masters: Master Finn, Master Swoop, Master Fant. I wanted to see more of them. I like Master Mal. Why didn't we follow their story? But no, we had to be with Theo and Casey and all these guys. Like, I didn't want to see their story. I want to see how Master Swoop became blind. Was he born that way? Was it an accident? Whatever, and stuff like that. Albert in Dino Charge. I loved him. I want to see more of him. I love Prince Philip. I want to see more of him. The characters I like never get the screen time. Why am I attracted to the characters who never get the development, who never get the screen time? That's the same thing about Nagi and Fuka, and even the grandfather in this series, which I'll get to. I wish there was more of him in the show. You know, just like, why is it my favorite characters get no attention? I'm just like, it's really annoying. All right, Katsumi. I hated her when the series began. She was uptight. She was stuck up. In a word, she was a bitch. She was basically Gia of Ninninger, really. But here's what I appreciate that they did in the series. Now, again, she was stuck up, she was a bitch, all that kind of stuff. She's shown to be the smartest of the team. She's inventing these inventions, and I really dislike the episode where she has to like pick between college and being a ninja, and she chooses both. I really think the direction they should have gone in for that episode was she had to pick one or the other. That she had to pick a ninja. And let's go on a quick tirade or a little. Let's go off subject just for a second. What really disappointed me with the overall story is here it is a family dynasty. And basically, what you told these kids in the very first episode is because grandfather did not succeed in his mission at the beginning, you have to clean up his mess. You have to be a ninja now, drop what you're doing, and pick up the responsibility of your family because that's what you're born into. You must know your place. You must do this. That was kind of how it was set up. And what I expected from that episode when I read the premise and when I was watching the episode about halfway through, I'm like, okay, so what's going to happen is she's got to give up college to be a ninja and to do this role. And then what's going to happen is she's going to resent her family. She's going to resent her grandfather because later on in the series, she could have had this great opportunity, but she can't because she's a ninja, because all these bad things are happening, and she would have to confront her grandfather and say, it's your fault that this all happened. If you had done your job, we wouldn't be ninjas, and we wouldn't be in the situation. Same thing for Yakumo being over in England and doing what he wants to do. Fuka about being an idol or going to school, whatever it is she wants to go ahead and do. And again, even the father at one point in the series was like, I can't believe you're doing this to the kids and all that, and it's your fault I'm not a ninja. And I really was hoping what would happen is all this resent and anger would go into the grandfather character, but then they would learn a lesson or something. I don't know how that would go ahead and end, but I wanted to see conflict. I want to see dynamics with it. And I thought what would happen in the episode where she had to choose is that she realizes she has to be a ninja. She can't have it both ways. You have to be one or the other. Reminisce of what the real world is, which I know that's bleak, but I think that's almost a lesson you really do need to go ahead and teach people. And then it would be, look what seeds you've sown, grandfather. Now, what will happen? What was the line from Star Trek 3? How many people have died on your hands, and what is yet to come? Basically something like that. What is going to come because of what you did not finish, grandfather. But they decide not to go in that direction, and that entire idea was thrown to the wayside. I mean, this series would have been 10 times better if that was thrown in there. Now, the overall theme we did give it the series, or at least the way I interpret it, is interesting, but not as good as this, because I think we need to have some sort of lesson. We need to talk about things like family dynasties and stuff like that. What it means to follow in the family, what responsibilities you have just because you were born into it. And of course, this ties into the ninjality, which I'm going to go ahead and talk about as well, because I find that problematic too. But here's the thing with Katsumi. Here's what I really liked. So when we got introduced to Mangetsu, who is the second son of Gengetsu, and we'll talk about the villains here later. He pretends to be an idiot so that he can, catch the Ninja off guard and defeat them. Now, what I like about this is it's Katsumi who comes up with the plan. It's like, oh, he's an idiot. We can easily trick him. They go with the plan. only to find out he's only pretending to be an idiot, and it rocks her world. Katsumi's like, I'm not as smart as I thought I was, and she works hard overnight to try and come up with a new strategy, to come up with new weapons, to figure out a way to defeat this guy, and she's so sad by herself. And there's a great scene, I forget the name of the episode or the number of the episode, where she's all by herself in the dark, and she's all pity about herself, like, why wasn't I good enough, and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was great for the character. It really was. I really enjoyed that, because she thought she was so smart. She thought she was so good, and suddenly, bam. She's not as smart as she was, and she has to face that fact. She has to face that reality. Something I think she should have faced it before, because she's too confident with herself. That's the problem I had. She's too confident with herself to where she could be a Mary Sue-like character. I didn't want to see anything bad happen to her, but I wanted her to face the reality of the situation, which, again, college, being a ninja, the reality is you have to be a ninja because this is what your family has put upon you, and you can't make that other choice. And the same here is like, you're not as smart as you thought you were, little girl, so what are you going to do about it? And that's ultimately, what the episode is. What are you going to do about it? And I like how she bounces back, and frankly, after that episode, I liked her so much more, because she learned a lesson. She changed as a character. She realized her flaws. And I just really like that a lot better. Yeah, so I mean, she's not my favorite character. I think I still like Fuka better, which I know is an odd thing to go ahead and say, but I love the fact that they gave her a character change. She goes from, again, Katsumi the bitch to Katsumi the I've learned a lesson and now I'm going to go ahead and try to fix it. And I really appreciate that. If we had more like that from the other characters and her character, heck, I wish we got that with the Super Mega Force Rangers. Again, that those are characters need to be brought down because they are too confident, they're too arrogant, they're too cocky. Katsumi was the same way, but they really changed her. Kenji, the Gold Ranger. All right. How do I put this? So he is supposed to be American. Now, do you want to know what American sounds like? Because I am one, and I'm talking to you guys normally, right? So, in his introductory episode, the line was, they are the grandchildren of the last ninja. So, of course, you would say, they are the grandchildren of the last ninja. That seems to be a very normal way of saying it, right? Right? And I apologize if I offend anyone with this, but this is pretty much how Kenji said it. They are the grandchildren of the last ninja. That's pretty much how he said it. He said it in such a stereotypical Japanese way. I have students who speak better English than him. And, okay, so he comes into the show and he takes over the show for like 8 episodes, basically. Like a fourth of the shows were dedicated to him and his story. But it's so ridiculous what they did with him because, first of all, they make him American, but they don't bother casting someone who can speak fluent English. And this is a problem I have. It comes back to the casting is the main problem. What they should have done is either A, make him Caucasian, make him white, get someone like Robert Baldwin to come in, because Robert Baldwin proves there is a precedent. We have actors in Japan who are white and can speak fluent English, fluent Japanese, and Robert Baldwin's case, I believe he can speak fluent French. They need to get a white person in that role, or, better yet, get an American actor who happens to be Japanese, like George Takei. Now, I don't think George Takei would be in this role, but, someone in their 20s who is both Japanese and American and speaks perfect English, because the suspension of disbelief for this character is stretched pretty thin when he is talking like a stereotypical Japanese person from a 1940s war propaganda film. I mean, it should be offensive. I find it as offensive, not because I am an American. I'm not saying they're offending Americans, but they're putting out this caricature, if you will, of someone who is supposed to be American that can't speak English. I think he only spoke English like 3 times in the entire series. One was in an introductory episode and a couple of episodes after. Further, his entire backstory is supposed to be that he's from America. Now, let's break this down logically, shall we? Based on the establishing shots and what we know, it seems that he's from somewhere in maybe Utah, Nevada, Arizona, around that point. And it seems that his family immigrated from Japan to the United States in the 19th century, because the establishing shots of his past and his father and his brother, no mention of his mother, which is a big thing in this series. They bring up like one relative, but the rest of them are all dead or not even mentioned. They speak fluent Japanese, they speak Japanese to each other, and they decide to be cowboys at a period in American history where there are no more cowboys unless you live in Dallas. Because they're dressed in, like they're in a Western, basically. So is Kenji from the Wild West? I mean, I don't get this. And again, if he speaks perfect English, why is it he always speaks perfect Japanese? I mean, it's okay. I'm getting lost here just because it really infuriates me that they couldn't get someone who spoke perfect English. Why wasn't that he spoke English and maybe he was dubbed or subbed or something like that, which would have been a little bit more convincing? Because why bother saying that your character is an American and go through all this stuff if you weren't going to cast someone who could actually speak English? And again, I know a lot of you are going to get in comments, well, there aren't that many Japanese that speak fluent English that are actors. Well, I tell you what, the guy that played Geki Chopper and Geki Ranger, guess what? He is Japanese, but he was born in the United States and speaks fluent English. And he was in Geki Ranger, he was in Kamen Rider, I'm told, and he was in the series last season. Yes, he was in ToQger. He was Mio's love interest in an episode. So they obviously have access to this guy. He's been in 2 productions from Toei. He was in a guest appearance in ToQger, and they've had precedent of actually bringing in actors from previous series to be on the show. Particularly Magi Yellow, the guy that played him. He was the Gold Ranger in Go Buster. So they have no scruples about getting the same actor to play a different role within the series, and a main role at that. So why didn't they just bring this guy in to actually speak English? I know it's a minor point, but again, it's like, imagine you're doing a film here in the United States, and you want somebody to go ahead and play somebody to play somebody from Africa, from deep Africa, the Congo, whatever, and stuff like that. Then you get a white person in the role, again from Africa, who doesn't speak the native language but only speaks English, and it's perfect English. Oh, and by the way, he has a Boston accent. That's pretty much what you're doing here. You're taking Raphael from the first Ninja Turtles movie, making him a white guy, and saying that he spent his entire life in Africa. That's basically what you're doing here, folks. And it's just a stupid casting decision. And again, it's not racial or anything. It's just that don't call him American if you're not going to put effort into it. Giving him a cowboy outfit, giving him a guitar, giving him a hat, that doesn't make him American. All right? So I think I've got enough on this point, but just to finish up with him, I didn't like him as a character. He was very bland. They have this whole thing about the darkness in his heart, and he becomes like a werewolf-like creature, which is like, I think, the 3rd time this has happened in Sentai, where somebody's been a werewolf creature. The last time I remember it happened was in Geki Ranger, so we're retreading to that. Have a connection with the enemy and stuff, and darkness in the heart, yada, yada, yada. Frankly, we've seen it before, and by the way, his power-up, nobody has mentioned this, but why is it that his super mode is Marty McFly from Back to the Future Part 3? Seriously, look at him. He's wearing a poncho just like what Marty wore. I don't get it. Why is that a super form? It's not a Battleizer, but it's an upgraded form. And why does nobody comment? I'm like the only person that's pointed that out. Nobody else has said that he looks like Marty, or as he was playing in the movie, Clint Eastwood. Alright, so yeah, as you can figure, I don't like this guy just because I mean, again, they didn't do anything interesting with him in the story. Nothing that we haven't seen before, which again is part of the criticism why the show is boring and all that. But they just didn't know what they were doing casting the character because either A, you get somebody who speaks English, or B, you change the character completely. Because I don't understand. If you really take the American aspect out of it, what is there? Because I believe what was happening in the earlier episodes is that he could not be trained as a ninja because he's not true Japanese or something, because he's an American, which falls by the wayside anyway in the series. So I don't know. Uh, it was just bad. Okay, let's move on to another character here. Let's talk about the grandfather. Oh boy, was he fun. I think he was certainly the best character in the series. I would love to see a prequel series. It's just about him becoming the last ninja, about him fighting off Getsu. I just found him to be so interesting. He was lively, he was fun, he was stern, he was stupid. He's the wise old mentor. He's basically like he's like Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back before he reveals to Luke that he's Yoda. He's like that, He's like the Japanese Yoda. He was really cool. I liked that. Why wasn't he focused more on the series? I really enjoyed him as a character. I really can't pinpoint why it is. He was just a lot of fun. He had interesting lessons. He fought in his own right. That episode where he had to save them from the villains and they fought in the river, that was like one of the best scenes in the entire series. I love that. I thought that was great. The whole revelation about him being dead kind of comes out of nowhere and really doesn't do much. I mean, the fact is he has to die anyway. And actually, let's talk about that real quick with the ninjality or whatever they call it. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about his son too, Samugi, and I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. So again, the problem I had, or what I had thought they were going to go ahead and do, was again, grandfather, you didn't do your job. This is what happened, and his son becomes resentful for him because he can't be a ninja. Now, the original thought was he didn't teach him because his son wasn't good enough, or his hands weren't good enough for being ninja. There was something, and he has a standoff with his grandfather, like, because of you, I didn't become a ninja, whatever. And again, I thought I was going to tie into that theme of being resentful to the grandfather for what happened. Now, Killman, who I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail right here, he really makes it easy for us not to go there. And what do I mean? It's not the story about the grandfather not teaching his son to be a ninja and his son regretting that he didn't become a ninja because of his father, but rather the ninjality was stolen from him as well as his memory, so he couldn't be a ninja. So he's not resentful of grandfather for not teaching him. He's resentful at the enemy from stealing from him in the first place. And actually, let me talk about ninjality because what's been established in GoFundMe is each series has its greater power. For ToQger, it's imagination now. For ToQger, it's bravery. The Buddy Roids for Go Buster and their friendship. All that's kind of been established, and that seems to be a trend now that they are establishing what the greater power is later in the series. Ninjality is what makes a person a ninja, and what this is trying to tell us in the context of the series is that it is something genetic. Why is it that these five guys are the ninja? Because they were born into the family, not because they were taught it, but they have the potential of being ninjas, much in the same way the midichlorians are in Star Wars, which I don't understand why people are upset about midichlorians. They actually make a lot of sense when you think about it. But moving on, ninjality is basically the midichlorians of Ninja. So basically, what is that that's what enables you to be a ninja. And I kind of dislike the idea that you have to be born into it to be this. And of course, if Kenji was a real American Japanese here, he wouldn't have it either, but he has to be Japanese in order for this to actually work, or at least be born in Japan. So the reason that the son, Sumugi, is not a ninja is because it was stolen from him. And that, to me, that really undercuts probably any potential message you were going to go ahead and tell. That it's because I always thought the grandfather, as he was presented, is that he had questionable decisions and questionable motives. That by the end of the series, he will have crossed a line to where the other ninja just couldn't accept it. Let's go back to Die Ranger, and I'm trying to Kaju, I believe was his name, was the mentor of the Die Ranger, and he basically decided at the end of that series to take over as the main antagonist of the Gorma tribe, or the leader of the Gorma tribe, because he figures if I can take over it, then I can bring peace from the inside. If I'm the leader of it, then I can establish peace. And the Die Ranger were really against it. And they hated that idea, and they all basically went to blows over it. And I really thought Grandfather would do something like that in the series. And, by the time we got to the end, we found out that he killed his own father to become the last ninja and get the ninjality. That's where I thought we would come into the whole thing of, hey, you have to do this. That's what it's all about. And you may not agree with my methods, but it's the right thing to do, or it is the moral thing to do, the human thing to do, however you want to go ahead and put it, depending on what that situation is. But again, with the ninjality, our villain does it for us. It takes away it takes away from our heroes having to make hard choices and go through morally questionable decisions. So let me just kind of break it down a little bit more than that, because again, I know it's kind of a train of thought right here. I'm trying to keep on the track. So let's say Grandfather did not teach his son how to be a ninja, and his son became resentful. Well, that opens up a number of possibilities which you could do with him. You can make him resentful and want to become a villain, resentful and make a bad choice, resentful and go get himself hurt and endanger other people by trying to be a ninja. That's something you can do with it. But since Kyoman took away his ninja abilities, well, the blame is no longer on the grandfather, and basically, Samugi is just a adult. He's just kind of clueless and simple guy, which is fine. I enjoyed his character. There was nothing really wrong with him, but you could have done more with his character if you had this relationship with his father, like you didn't train me to be a ninja. But when you bring in the villain to take that away, you take away all conflict and drama that was supposed to be there. The same thing with the grandfather. His grandfather had to kill his father in order to become the last ninja. He had to do something morally reprehensible for the greater good, and the greater good was to stop Gengetsu from taking over the world. Okay, so we may not agree with him on it, but we could probably understand his situation and being Japanese tradition and so forth. So I get that. Now, when you introduce that element, you tell the Rangers, hey, you have to kill your own grandfather to save the world, it becomes a moral dilemma. What do you do? The problem is that they take away the Ninja's ability to make a meaningful choice, to make that choice. Do I kill them? Do I kill my grandfather and save the world, or do I not kill him and have to suffer the consequences of the villain taking over? But no, they don't do that. Killmon kills him, who's already dead, mind you, and Killmon takes the ninjality and becomes the last ninja. So basically, it took the moral dilemma from them, and that's where I have a problem with the relation about the grandfather character, is that they set it up where, yes, there is this moral dilemma. There's things we can go ahead and do with it, but we choose not to do it because we're not going to put our characters through this moral dilemma to make them make a choice. And that's what really bothers me here, because what if Takaharu did decide, yes, I have to kill my grandfather, then what does that say about Takaharu as a character? Or heck, Fuka, the innocent, young, plucky girl of the series who's probably barely legal, has to kill her grandfather. How does that change her as a character? I've taken a life, it was the life of my grandfather who I loved, to save the world. Or, worse yet, I've killed my grandfather and it was for nothing. We don't get that, and that's one of the biggest faults of the series, is that they don't seize the obvious opportunities for drama and storytelling. Instead, they come with this character Killmon, which I will again talk in detail about, who takes the moral dilemma away from our characters, and I really, really hate that. So that's kind of the problem that I have there, and with ninjality, because ninjality, again, not only does it force you to have characters who are born into the family to have it genetically, but it's something tangible that it can be taken away, and because it can be taken away, it sets up these artificial problems. Because why can't it just be, I learned to be a ninja. This is my skill. It's nothing metaphysical. It's nothing cosmic. It's just my own skill. Because there used to be a time with Super Sentai and Power Rangers where it was just genuine skill that was enhanced by the morphing ability. Now it's, it's civilian powers, and I have to agree with Linkara on it, because the suit does become an afterthought when you can do supersonic screams, or you can run at super speed, or turn yourself invisible, or make shield projections or stuff like that. It's just, being a ranger is no longer special when you already have a superpower. Which, by the way, Justin had to choose between super strength and being the Blue Ranger in an episode of Turbo, and he decided, heck, I'm going to go ahead and be a Power Ranger instead. And that, of course, would be interesting to get back to. All right. So let's move on to Shishio, who you all probably know as the Lion Hao in Human Disguise. Now, excuse me. Excuse me. Shishio, I like him. He's an old drunk man. I don't know why. He's like Bo Raicho from Mortal Kombat, and for some reason, again, I like this character, and I wish he showed up more in the series, because he challenges the Ninja. He says, "No, you can't have my help. You have to earn my help." The way he goes about it is, it's questionable, and I don't particularly like it too much, but it's always nice where heroes have to go on a journey, have to earn something. Because what they have to go to a temple, they have to find him, they have to appease him, they have to convince him to join the team, and they eventually win him over. And I think that was, a great thing to go ahead and do. I just wish they had him in the series more as a character. Yeah, he was limited to being the Battleizer Morpher throughout the series, but heck, I liked him. I wish there was more they could do with him. And again, conflict with the grandfather. He could have said something about the grandfather character, and they didn't get along with each other, and they could have come to blows at any time, but they decided not to do that, and he is limited to the Battleizer form. And something I do want to bring up, and you know, I've actually been accused in some of my videos of being a social justice warrior, which, no, I'm not. I'm not one of those people, but I do recognize issues in society, issues in media, and that's simply because it's what I study. That's not, my bread and butter. And it's hard to watch Ninja, and you have this powered up item, this Battleizer, and the Red Ranger, the Gold Ranger, the Blue Ranger, and the Yellow Ranger, all the male Rangers have used it, but only once did the White Ranger use it, and it was as a joke to make fun of the situation. And then the other time is when the Pink Ranger became worthy of it, but declined to do it. Why can't you give the girls the Battleizer? I mean, and again, when you look back at ToQger and they had to share the Battleizer, that was stupid enough. But just kind of like, you can't come up with a costume to put them on this, or at least cover up their current costume and let them have this Battleizer, let them be this badass Shogun warrior. I mean, I don't know why that they didn't do that. Is it sexist? Maybe. I don't know. It's just kind of odd. You got 6 Rangers. Only 4 of them actually got to wear the armor in a practical way and not as a joke. Because, again, when Fuka got the armor, it was when she was unmorphed, and it was really just because Shishio was being a pedophile. I mean, that's pretty much why he did it. And then the Katsumi, she didn't want it because, well, I don't remember her reason, but I'm sure it wasn't substantial. But it's just something to really think about, and I really hope that when we get to Zyuohger, that if and when, well, when, because I'm sure the if is not in there, they do some sort of Battleizer or super mode, that it is going to be where even the girls get to go ahead and use it. Because you know what? I would buy an SH figure art of a Battleizer on one of the female characters. I would definitely go ahead and do that. I don't know why that's not a big deal. Why that's a big deal here. Okay, something else I want to go ahead and talk about as far as characters. Now, this is very unprecedented within the series, unless you count crossovers with GoKaiger. Is that this series had a total of 5 previous Super Sentai characters and one Tokusatsu character to show up in the series. And what's great about it is that it's all tied into the overarching continuity. So, as you all know, in the 40th anniversary, well, 40th anniversary from the original airing, except for the whole Gato incident, unfortunately, um, we got 2 previous red ninjas to appear as teachers for the ninja, particularly Ninja Red from Kaku Ranger and Hurricane Red from Hurricaneger. And what was great about it is it was so natural. It was special to see them, but it's like, well, no, duh. We're gonna bring in 2 ninjas to teach them how to be ninjas, and we have 3 ninjas up on screen together, much in the same way we had 3 dinosaur warriors. And I thought that was a great episode. Is it the best episode? Probably not, but I think what they actually did in Ninja, which was great, is they were able to seamlessly blend in the history of Super Sentai without really having to call attention to it. For example, when Magi Yellow comes up into the series, he makes a brief appearance. He appears morphed. You hear the theme song, but it's discovered that he is the magic teacher to Yakumo. And that's the way you have to go ahead and do it. You have an established character who knows magic, who is shown to be teaching magic, and got an actor who comes back for a sandwich, basically. And you tie it into what you have in this character. Now, I don't know if that was originally intended or not, but man, I thought it was really great. And the way they did Shurikanger, when they brought him into the series to do the cards, basically where they did the clip show, I thought that was a very clever way of doing it, because you did bring in a pre-established character who's a ninja who is tied into the other ninjas in the series, and he just wants to see what these guys are up to and challenge them. So again, just tying in all these characters. Even Aka Ranger made an appearance when he didn't have to. It's a little disappointing he didn't show up out of costume because they can get that actor, and it makes you wonder what Grandfather's connection is to the greater world of Super Sentai, and heck, whatever his connection is to Aka Ranger may have inspired him to make the Ninja in the first place, because you're just ninjas, but if you actually go ahead and make yourself a Sentai, that makes you even greater. I don't know, but I really like the way that they tied it in. And I am going to point something out to some people out there, and you know who you are I'm talking to. No, Ninninger does not take place in the movie continuity universe. And what do I mean by that? There are people out there that propose that there are 2 continuities of Super Sentai, that each season is its own separate continuity that's not connected whatsoever, and that there's the movie continuity, where it's all the Versus movies, GoKaiger, and Ninja, that they all exist in a separate universe, but only because they want to. Yeah, I'm going to call BS on that, and I think that's dumb because you know what? It's 40 years, it's all tied in. Yes, are there inconsistencies? Sure, but that's just kind of the nature of the thing. Look at The Simpsons. Look at Star Trek. There's going to be inconsistencies no matter what. But you don't say that there are 2 universes or 2 continuities just because it's convenient for you. And I said this before in previous videos. It is one continuity. Don't make it up. Don't say, well, Ninja takes place in the shared universe, but ToQger, that's a singular universe, except for when ToQger is in the movie universe. Yeah, that's BS. I'm not going to entertain that anymore. All Sentai from Go Ranger up to Zyuohger take place in the same universe. So there. So deal with it, okay? And actually, on that same point, other tokusatsu seem to have taken place, and I hope I pronounce this correctly. Jiraiya, who was a tokusatsu ninja from, I think it was like the 80s or the early 90s. Yeah, it was from the mid 80s. The fact that he shows up in the series, I have no idea who this guy is, but because of his appearance, I want to torrent his series and find out more about him, which is the best way of doing it. That's what you want to go ahead and do. Again, they tie in other ninjas. They make the world bigger. They make it richer. They show that they're not the only ninjas out there doing stuff, that there are other ninjas. There's this greater community. And actually, what I thought one of the better ideas that they had that really went nowhere was, and I quote, the Committee for the Protection of the Good Name of Ninja. Now, call me crazy, and many of you do. But call me crazy, and I think that this committee, and that's what we just refer to as the committee, is in response to Captain America: Civil War. Because what's going on with the plot of Civil War is that basically they got the Soviet, Slovakia, these new accords in the Captain America Civil War movie, where it basically says that we need to have accountability for superheroes. And while that's a topic for another time and something that's too deep to get into on this particular video being as long as it is, I think it's a great idea that should be introduced within Super Sentai. And the whole idea, in Power Rangers 2, is that this committee is basically saying we recognize that there's ninjas all over the world. Ninjas get a bad rap sometimes, especially with nunchucks and censorship on Ninja Turtles. So we need to make people respect ninjas again. It's kind of like a union or something like that. And we have to have accountability because part of it was, don't use ninjas within the radius of civilians. If you break one of the rules, you revoke your ability to be a ninja for X amount of time or something like that. And I think that's a great idea to bring into the series. It never goes beyond this one episode, but the accountability of superheroes is something I think we need to explore in different forms of media. And I think that's where the Hexagon Project was going to go, was about the accountability of Power Rangers, until that they got scrapped for Ninja Storm, of course. Nevertheless, I just think that this appearance and how it ties in and this committee of ninjas, that's something that really should have been expanded upon a little bit more. I would have liked to see more come for that. But again, as it is just the one episode, and it was probably riding off of what was going to go ahead and happen in Captain America: Civil War. Because believe it or not, that thing is actually getting some steam here over in Japan. Because I've seen posters for it, I've seen previews for it. So the Japanese are getting just as excited about this film as we are in America. So yeah, who knows? It could be a reaction, preemptive strike, where you want to go ahead and call it and say, "Ha, we have our own version of that," or the Superhero Registration Act, or whatever you want to call it, in Super Sentai. Let's I want to go ahead and cover some more things about the Ninja before I talk to villains. First of all, I didn't really like the weapons of this series. Now, okay, swords, I get it. Those were great. I didn't like the gimmick of the shurikens spinning and all that. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? There's always a gimmick. I wish you could actually change it to where there is no gimmick, but that's what we got. But I think the biggest problem that I had is that the weapons really did look like toys. I mean, they were colored like toys, the bright neon yellows and stuff, and the oranges. I mean, look at their guns. I mean, while a frog gun is pretty cool, it looks like a toy. That four-pointed weapon, whose name I did not write down at the moment, that turns into a bow and arrow and a sword and a dagger. I mean, that totally looks like a toy. How come it didn't? They couldn't make it look more realistic. I mean, if you look at if you look at Kaku Ranger and you look at Hurricaneer, they have swords in their series, katanas, whatever they are, and they look straight up like ninja weapons. They look like real weapons that were forged from metal. But for some reason, the ninja toys look like, or ninja weapons look like toys. I don't know why they felt like they had to go ahead and do that. Why they had to make them look more like toys and less like actual weapons. And again, I don't understand the whole. The thing is, for a series called Shuriken Sentai Ninja, they didn't use shurikens very much. They used it like predominantly in the first episode and sparingly throughout the series. I mean, I would have expected they'd be throwing ninja stars far more often than what they did, but they're very very rarely used as weapons, and they're used on these shurikens. And I just didn't think they were that impressive. And by the way, we had 48 ceiling shurikens in the series, and I think one or two have been unaccounted for. And I don't understand the mythos behind them because, really quick, the series establishes in the same, pretty much in the same episode, I think it was the UFO Maru episode, where they establish that the shurikens are going back to their true forms, while Grandfather also states that he made the Zords to reflect what their children like. Now, he's referring specifically to the new Zords, the Shinobi Maru, the Drago Maru, and so forth, the ones they were using. But that doesn't explain the UFO Maru. Now, is it saying that the UFO Maru, that the Shuriken form is based off of a real UFO, that he designed it that way, and thus this is the original form. Because if that was the case, when he originally sealed Gengetsu, that it was already a UFO, that these were designed like decades ago, or is it? I mean, I'm just not sure. The mythology behind it is so confusing, because it also seems like the shurikens are a relatively recent invention, because the Rodeo Maru, believe it or not, was custom made over the internet. Like, you're ordering something from freaking Amazon, which I didn't particularly get that. There is no consistency behind the mythos here. Are the sealing shurikens like ancient devices used to seal these villains for centuries, or are they a newer technology that was somehow corrupted? Because I don't really understand. If somebody can go into a little bit more detail, please do so in the comments. But I was really confused on what they were. Did he design them or did he not? Which is it? You gotta go ahead and make up your mind there. Um, and again, the whole 48 thing, I don't know. That seems a very arbitrary number to go ahead and have. And talking about the Zords themselves, again, they have the gimmick of the shurikens, and I didn't really like that. I mean, I'm going to probably talk about this later, but why did it have to be a shuriken base? Why couldn't it just be, have a dinosaur, have an elephant, have a surfer, whatever and stuff? Why do we have to have all these shurikens in there? It just seemed like a gimmick that wasn't very interesting. Uh, the Lion Hao was probably my favorite, just because it's freaking awesome. It's a flying lion castle, so that was pretty cool. And also too, there is inconsistency with the size of the Zords. So just for the record here, if you actually look at the Lion Hao, the idea is that when piloted, Takaharu in his battle laser armor is sitting on the outside of the Zord, which of course is the best place to be when you're in a battle, and he's sitting inside the mouth of the Zord. Now, if you actually take the toys and you line up the sizes of the toys in relative to each other, because while the Zords may be inconsistent with others throughout the series, because the Megazord from Zoo Ranger, from Power Rangers, is significantly smaller than say the Thunder Megazord. It's the exact same size in toy lines, but of course each line is different. They're not being consistent from line to line, basically, because if that were the case, then Paraminus would be, much, much larger than a lot of the other Zords that we have, and Serpentera would be extremely massive compared to everything else. The point I'm making is they're inconsistent with the size, to where either A, they weren't paying any attention when they were designing the toys and the Zords for Ninninger, to where Takaharu is inconsistent with his own form, or two, Takaharu becomes a giant when he is in the pilot seat of the Lion Hao. And if that is the case, why wasn't that utilized in the series? Because being a giant could be advantageous to actually fighting giant monsters. Again, I don't know what they were thinking, but it was just, oh wow, oh wow. And something else that kind of bothers me about the Zords, and this last thing before we get into the villains, is that it is implied, well, not implied, it's stated that the Zords have souls, that they are alive, that they are sentient, that they have feelings, that they think for themselves. Shinobi Maru certainly has it, Rodeo Maru certainly has it, and all the others, I believe, would have it too. But why? Why are they alive? And this goes back to something, a point I made a long time ago about sentient Zords. Why make them alive if you're not going to do anything about it? The only time they referenced the fact that they were alive and made a major part of the episode is when Shinobi Maru didn't feel he was good enough because all the other Maru were being used instead of him, and he ran away. And when Rodeo Maru wanted to come up with a contract to get back at his boss for the mistreatment that he felt he had suffered. Yeah, I don't get that. Those are the only two instances in which they were referenced, but is the Dump Maru alive? Does it have a personality? The Drago Maru, the Surfer Maru? Again, if they are alive, what is their personality? And again, if they're alive, what were you going to do with it? I'm also curious on where they actually go when they're not in use, because there is an episode where Kenji is camping out at the base of the Rodeo Maru, who's just hanging out there. So does he sleep? is there a Zord dock somewhere? I mean, what the heck is going on? And I also feel it's also a cheat that their final set of Zords, which the ones with the animals and the shapes, and again I can't remember the names. I should have wrote that down. Um, that in order for them to work, that they need to be imbued with a soul. They don't really bother in going on how you create a soul, but they decided, hey, instead of putting the souls of something in there or create one, how about we just put ourselves in there? And the implication I got actually reading up on this before I'd seen the episode was that the Rangers themselves turn into the Zords, which is not the case. Obviously, in Kaku Ranger and Magi Ranger, they would turn into the Zords themselves. They would be giant, robots, basically, through the use of magic and all that. But this series, like, their souls are just inside of them, so they become this ethereal form and fill out this giant robot, um, which is kind of odd. I don't get it exactly. Last thing is, I don't understand. I really don't know what to say because I don't know why they did what they did in the series. Why couldn't it be they just turned into giant robots? That would have been cool. That's something we don't get enough of in the series. And there are so many possibilities you could have with that, but again, they choose not to go ahead and do it. The only thing I can say about the final robot that they had was that the finishing move is shooting themselves out of the robot in the air to attack the monster. That is awesome. So I'm not going to fault it for that. That's probably one of the coolest finishing moves of any robot in the history of Super Sentai and Power Rangers. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about our enemies who, eh. All right, Gengetsu. I have nothing really to say about him. He was never really there in the series. He showed up at the end. He had a couple appearances here and there as this disembodied head or whatever and all that. And frankly, the way he was defeated was very, very simple. It was anticlimactic. That's what I'm going to say about the final episode too. It was anticlimactic. It wasn't very interesting. And in Gengetsu, I love the idea of his backstory. Is that he was a domain lord who felt that he could take over Japan, take over the world through the use of fear, was defeated and died, and in the afterlife came back as an Oni, came back as a demon, and wants to retake the world, basically. And that seems like a very interesting backstory because it does mirror Kyoman, that we'll get to here, and mirrors others like Darth Vader and such, to where somebody who's tempted by power, becomes a twisted form, no longer becomes a man because of that. And that's implied with the other characters is that all the other villains were human at one point, but they lost their humanity in the pursuit of dominance and gaining the power of fear. And I think that's a great thing to go into because it could happen to our Rangers. It almost happened with Kenji, but it's the only one it happened to. And it's the sixth Ranger, and of course stuff like that's going to happen. But again, how more interesting would it be if it was like Fuka or Nagi or Katsumi? That maybe Katsumi looks at the power of fear as a way to become smarter or something. Why couldn't we tempt the Rangers with the power of fear to where they can look at themselves and say, this is what I will become if I don't keep my ambition in check, if I don't keep my power in check? Because again, one of the things they did well with Operation Overdrive is where Mac, asked Moltor, "What's it like to give up your humanity?" And I think that's something that we could have done with Gengetsu, is like giving up your humanity. Not to mention, again, they were real people at one point, and it's kind of a disservice to put them in these costumes when you could have real people in those roles, to where they could be a real husband and a real wife, and we could get some sort of drama out of it. Because his wife, Arike, and again, I hope I pronounced that right, I didn't really get to feel bad for her or anything through the series. I mean, if she was played by a real actress who could emote with facial expressions, I probably would have felt a lot bad for her when her son Mengetsu died. Who Mengetsu was interesting, but he didn't last long. It wasn't all that interesting. Raizo Gabi, he wasn't very interesting either. I was actually glad they got rid of him by the 12th episode, but of course he came back at the end, and nothing new right there. The only villain that I found really interesting that I wanted to see more of was Masakage. And again, I hope I pronounced his name right. He's the green dude, the green and brown dude. Now, here's the thing: is like he was cunning, he was ruthless, he was really despicable, but they didn't take him far enough in the series. In his final appearance, basically what he did is he turned uh, everybody against the Ninja. They basically corrupted their memories to make it sound like, hey, it's this guy who is my best friend in the world who did all these great things for me, and anybody talks bad of him, I'm going to go ahead and attack him. Basically, a way to turn people against one another. And what he does is he turns the civilian population against the Ninja, and then he turns the Ninja against each other. And that's something that I think probably could have happened throughout the series. What a lot of people forget about the original Ninja Turtle series is towards the end when they introduced Count Drag, voiced by, or not Count Drag, but Lord Drag, who was voiced by Tony J, no less, is that his plan was to discredit the Turtles and have humanity turn against them and embrace him as an alien and the savior to defeat the Turtles. Yeah, it doesn't make sense within the context of Ninja Turtles, but it's a plan that's worth thinking about. Even Rita did that in Mighty Morphin, where she turned people against the Rangers, saying, hey, don't trust them because they're destroying the town and everything. That would have been a great plot to spend several episodes on, if not the entire series, and then have the other Rangers fight against each other, not because of mind control, because like do it, but because their memories have been altered to think that they are their enemies now. That's something I definitely would have liked to have seen, to see him do more things like that, because he was more sinister. He was a better villain. Now he is a toady, of course, because once he finds out Killmon's real origins, what's the first thing does? He's apologize and bowing down, say I'm sorry, and all that kind of stuff. Um, and there's that whole thing about the final episode where it turns out that he's actually super tiny, but his body is a giant robot that he's controlling, which makes no sense because, again, if you look at the time period, which was like 400 years ago, he wouldn't have access to something like that technology wise. And what's the point of him being small? How did he become small? Why does that tie into the series whatsoever? Why was it only a function in the last episode? And why is it that you couldn't destroy him because he was in a robot body? Yeah, none of that made any sense. Now we get to Killmon. So here's the first thing: is this a man or a woman? That's a legitimate question, because here was the weird thing about it. So the character appears on screen in the first few episodes, looks feminine just based on the color scheme and the design, even the way that she walked, and the voice is a woman voicing the character. But with a proper translation of the Japanese, they are using masculine pronouns, that it is a male character, and we find out later that it is indeed a man. So why give them a woman's voice? Why give him a feminine demeanor and feminine appearance? That's never explained in the series. I suppose it's to make it otherworldly in some way. I mean, because frankly, if you had, say, you had a television series or a movie where you had, say, you had beautiful Japanese girl as your villain, like say you got Go-Go from Kill Bill, and she comes in, instead she looks like the schoolgirl with the skirt and the boots and all that kind of stuff. But what if she came in and sounded like Christopher Lee, basically? That would be disturbing. That would be putting you off kilter. It would be very odd. You would be very uneasy about something like that. And I get the effect that has. But the fact that this is a costumed monster, and you can't tell if it's male or female, it's more confusing and less off-putting. Would be the best way to go ahead and put it. So again, why did they make this character male but make it appear kind of female with a female voice? Further, as we are getting in the movie coming after the series, it turns out that the person who voiced him, whatever, is going to be the Green Ranger, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. So what? Because what it seemed like to me in the final episode is that he was going to take the green shuriken and become the Green Ranger in that episode. Turns out that's not going to happen. It's going to be given to a female who happens to be the voice actress for him. So again, that's kind of odd. Like, is he being reincarnated as a woman, or is this as maybe the trailers suggesting the mother of Takaharu and Fuka? I'm not really sure on what they're going for here, and the fact that they're introducing a Green Ranger in another movie, and let me just go on a little tangent here. I'm really getting sick and tired of them come up with six Rangers or seventh Rangers or extra Rangers in the movies, and they're simply repaints of previous Rangers instead of whole new designs. So the Green Ranger or Mido Ninja is going to be a repaint of the Red Ranger. Helmet is exactly the same, just green. If we look at Tokyu Nanago from ToQger, it is the Orange Ranger suit painted purple. Helmet's the same, morpher is the same. Excuse me, it's exactly the same, just purple. And then we take a look at Go Buster. What was the Hippopotamus Ranger? Just the Blue Ranger, repainted green with ears. The Puma Ranger was the Red Ranger, painted completely black. They're not putting any type of thought or effort into these extra Rangers for these films. And that really pisses me off, because all it seems to be doing is trying to sell extra whatever and have another Ranger key that they can charge us an insane price for by the time that the Ranger key set comes out. And when you look at it, just saying. Six Ninja, the grandfather, the son, the Green Ranger, and then of course we have the four Army Rangers. That makes 14 keys right there at bare minimum. So there's a whole set for you. I don't get it. Okay, so Killmon, again, and let's talk about the character in general. We've seen this character before. Disciple of the good guys, turns to the dark side. Retell the Darth Vader story here. And again, as I said earlier in the video, just takes the conflict and the moral choice away from the Ninja. I didn't find him to be that interesting of a villain. I didn't find any of these villains to be very interesting. The only good thing I can say about the villains is that their lair was pretty cool. It was black space. All you had was the paper doors in the background with the ominous light coming out. You didn't really have I mean, it was very minimalistic. It was eerie. It was moody, and I really liked it. I thought that was great, and it wasn't until the end that you found out there was a castle underground and it rose up above ground. So I thought that was a great way of doing it. But that's all I can really say about the villains that was anything of remote interest. So poor villains, and well, that's what you get. Okay, so again, I've already talked about how the ending is anticlimactic, but here's what I want to do. I want to talk about the overall theme of the series, and they got two main messages I think that they want to go ahead and share with us at the end. First, in relation to Killmon, basically what he felt was that the grandfather was favoring his son too much. That he was just there so that the grandfather's son could go ahead and become the last ninja. That was a family thing. But as ToQger points out, is that it is the competition to become the last ninja. The direction grandfather was pushing all of them in to be the best is how they became the best. So I think that's one minor thing that they're trying to point out with this villain. That villain did not understand until the end that it wasn't the grandfather didn't like me, is that he was trying to push me with competition to make me become a better ninja than what I am. So I think that that's a good lesson. But as was established in the first episode, what's the line that they say after morphing is like, "We may be shinobi, but we don't hide." Well, I mean, think about it for a second. Shinobi or ninja is a person who hides in the shadows, is an assassin, doesn't want to get caught. Watch Gaijin Goomba's video on what a ninja is. He'll definitely go ahead and explain much better than I can. But they're not ninjas in this, not traditionally speaking. The Ninja Turtles are not traditional ninjas. The Ninja Rangers from the third season are not traditional ninjas. We have not seen an actual traditional ninja in media for, I think the only time I ever saw it was in The Last Samurai. That was probably the only time I saw a traditional ninja, as it were, in at least again Western work. Um, but the first episode basically establishes that they are ninja, but they are going their own path. They are being different than what tradition dictates. As we find out with the last ninjas, that you have to kill the previous last ninja to gain their powers and gain the title of being the last ninja. And what happens in the series? Takaharu and the others choose not to follow that path, to follow their own way, and it is their own way that helps defeat the enemy. Rather anticlimactically, and of course using the ceiling shuriken to create a world without the ceiling shuriken, basically. Um, so basically, it's the idea that, yeah, we were born into this family and this tradition, and this is what the tradition says we do, but we are our own people, and we are going to make our new tradition. We're still going to honor our family, but we're going to go in a different direction. So this explains Yakumo using magic. Yeah, it may not be traditional, but hey, that's how he is able to take his ninja abilities and make them greater, is to supplement them with magic. Katsumi, same way, using science and technology to advance her ninja abilities. And I think what this is ultimately, and this is just my interpretation, is I think Ninja at the end of the day is a metaphor for modern day Japan. Now, my minor is in Japan studies, and I'm not going to go into all the details here, but this is basically how I look at it. Is that Ninja is basically saying, yes, we have this long history and tradition of being ninjas. This is our culture, this is our heritage. But if we're going to move forward, we have to do things our own way, that we can't adhere by culture and tradition all the time. And that's frankly what Japan is. A lot of people have described Japan as a mismatch between culture, tradition, and history with new science and technology. That just seems kind of odd that this country embraces technology while it also has a lot of ancient traditions. It's kind of like it's like giving an Amish a laptop. Basically, is that it doesn't seem like it's a natural fit. But what Japan consistently has been able to do is to adapt. And the thing is that if you look at the history of Japan, if they did not adapt to certain situations, there would be no Japan as we know it today. That they had to be modified, changed, and go a different direction than what tradition said, whether it was in their constitution, their ruling body, how they operated the country. Just things had to go ahead and change for the better. And if we didn't change again, it wouldn't be here. And the Ninja are the same way. Is that we can't kill our grandfather. We choose not to do it, but here's what we're going to do instead, and this is how it's going to go ahead and work out. So when they all reject the title of Last Ninja at the end of the series, it's symbolic of them just taking their own path. And then they say in the final charge, it's like it's basically saying, hey, we're not here by destiny or fate or anything like that. We're here because we choose it. That we've carved out our own path in life. Which again, same thing about Japan, and that's a good moral message because again, the series, well, again, maybe this is my interpretation of it, but it's saying you have to be a ninja. This is what you have to go ahead and do. But we've seen consistently through the series that they get to make their own choices without being bound by tradition, getting in their way of living their own lives. Which again, I don't think the series should have gone in that direction, but that's what we got, and it ties in well into the end. So I just think that Ninja is the metaphor for Japan in the series, that Takaharu and the others are all of Japan, and that's what the series is trying to go ahead and say to the children is like, hey, you have this history, you have this tradition. By all means, follow it, but make your own path in life. Don't do it because this is what your family says or something like that. I wish I could be more articulate in what I mean, but I think you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to go ahead and say. All right, so I think that's all I really have to say. I've been talking for the last hour and a half on Ninja, but here's the ultimate conclusion: it's better than ToQger. All right, there's more to it than that. I think it's a pretty good series. I think much in the same way of GoFundMe is that it's kind of there. It's not going to be remembered too much, I think, for its great story. I mean, it's certainly not going to be like Jetman or Geki Ranger for its character development or anything. I think it's a non-offensive series that's going to be remembered as kind of, oh yeah, and Ninja kind of came along. And there's no shame in that. There's no real big issue that I have with it. I liked it. Okay. Again, right now my least favorite Sentai is ToQger, for all the reasons I mentioned at the beginning and in that video. But Ninja's okay. It's just okay is the best way I can say it. I look forward to watching ToQger. I hope that they've learned their lessons, that they've made things better. Although starting out, ToQger already has some problems I need to address here soon. But I encourage, if you haven't actually watched all of Ninninger, and I don't know why you'd be listening to this video if you didn't, go and watch it, go and enjoy it. And I seriously want to know what you guys think of Ninninger. Did I make some valid points? Do you have something else that I did not bring up? Or did you guys hate it, despise it? Is it your favorite Sentai? Whatever you have to go ahead and say, leave in the comments. I would love to go ahead and know. So, until next time, I want to thank you all for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.